So we had a little bit of a malfunction. Hello, hello, with the microphone on the stand. So hopefully people that are watching online can hear us. So last time we were talking about, we were doing a little Musar, which is Jewish ethics, and talking about whether there's a reward for a mitzvah in this world, and comparing it with what the reward in the world to come would be. And so Rabbi Elihu Dessler, who was a scholar of Musar, writing about 100 years ago or more, said that the reward in the world to come would be so sublime and just overwhelmingly better and exponentially more exceptional than anything we could have here, that there couldn't possibly be a reward as such in this world. And that really the only reward for a mitzvah in this world is another mitzvah, which you may have heard before. The famous phrase is mitzvah goreret mitzvah. A mitzvah begets another mitzvah. So the next sort of question, and Musar is very logical, so sort of experiencing spirituality in a very logical sense is very common in Musar, and it's very common with Maimonides, who we'll hear from here. So we've already seen that there can be no true reward for a mitzvah in this world. So Dessler asks this: why does the second paragraph of the Shema promise such concrete rewards? Well, I didn't put it in here, but it says, "V'haya im shemoa tishma'u el mitzvotai asher anochi mitzavedecha b'hayom." If you hear or hearken upon the words that I say to you this day, there will be rain in the proper season, and the cattle will do well, and you'll reap the harvest and the vintage and all that kind of thing. So Rabbi Dessler says, how can it be that this contradicts the idea that there's no reward, a concrete reward for a mitzvah in this world? And Maimonides says, these rewards are only to ensure we can spend more time engaged in holiness. So any of the money that you acquire in life, any of the material goods that you acquire in life, any of the success that you acquire in life is only to sort of be a catalyst for your spiritual path, for your Torah study. And comparing, in other words, it's only to engage in holiness. It's not for material acquisition, because it couldn't possibly be for material acquisition. Why? Because the acquisition of material things only leads to a desire for the acquisition of material things. Just like a mitzvah leads to a mitzvah, materialism only leads to materialism. We always think about billionaires building their businesses. Why are they trying to make more money? What could they possibly need it for? What could they possibly do with it? Except to get to the end of life and say, I win. So in Buddhist thought, as a way of comparison, this could be described as the levers of survival. So you go out, you acquire things, you make a name for yourself, and you keep chasing the money and fame that never add up to an ounce of satisfaction, fulfillment, or meaning. So chasing something that's empty, chasing emptiness basically, being attached to material things, being attached to certain outcomes, being attached to having nice things, or just being attached to consumption in general. It could be consumption of material goods, or it could be consumption of food. One of the best examples that I've read about is when you eat a donut. So the first time you have a donut, it's like the most incredible experience of your life. The sugar is like rushing into your brain and it feels so good. And then the second time you have a donut, it's just not quite as good. And the third time, you might have to have 2 donuts to get the same, because food is like a drug. So it doesn't continue to add up, and there's no end to it. It's an infinite amount that you would need to continue to get the same, like that hit. It leaves. So we know that Rabbi Dessler is right about the fallacy of looking for material reward from this world. The only benefit of achieving material success is to engender spiritual study and practice. So in other words, God only says in the second paragraph of the Shema, I'm going to give you all these things, because if I don't give you all these things, you're just going to be concerned with surviving, and you can't focus on spiritual practice when you don't have anything. You have to go out and milk the cows every morning, and you have to go feed the chickens, and you have to work on your farm. And if you don't have any of those things, and you don't have abundance, you barely have sustenance, how could you possibly have a spiritual life if you don't have sustenance? So what's interesting is we have the prayer for the new month. Every month we say a special prayer when the new month is going to start, in anticipation of it. And I've always found it interesting that one of the things we ask for is parnasah. Why would we ask for economic viability in a prayer? It's like so strange to ask for money, from God, like we're asking for parnasah. But when you look at it from this perspective, it actually makes total sense. We would say, let us have parnasah. Actually, I didn't put this in here either, but it's perfect. What does Tevye say in the famous song, If I Were a Rich Man? He says that if he had all the money in the world, the best thing would be to sit in the synagogue and pray. So even in a farcical, Freilich play, a musical that isn't even supposed to be serious, really about Jewish life, it's a very serious thing that Tevye is saying he's not wealthy enough to have the time to pray. So this is exactly what they're talking about. So Dessler is a expert on Musar, and he's using Maimonides' understanding of Torah and understanding of spiritual practice to point to what is the ultimate purpose of having material abundance. What is the ultimate purpose of doing a mitzvah? It's not to have a reward. We don't do good things and then God gives us nice stuff. Like that's sort of like the Christmas morning analogy that we're all familiar with if we live in America, right? It's more like you do a mitzvah, you want to do another one. It feels good to do a mitzvah, but there's the only reward for it, if there is a reward, is to allow you to do more spiritual practice and to take yourself farther away, float away from the things of value. The other day, I was stuck without my phone and my computer. One of those situations where you have to ask somebody to call your spouse so that they can come get you because you've screwed up enough that you don't have any access to anything now. You're completely reliant on other human beings. So I sat at a coffee shop, and I had nothing with me. It was a very strange experience. The only thing I had was a credit card. That's it. But I had no phone, and I had no computer, and I had no magazine. Nothing. So all I did was sit and watch people interact with each other. And it was like the most relaxed I've been in probably 2 months because I couldn't do anything. There was nothing to do. So sitting and practicing stillness, and I thought at that very moment, I'm going to talk about this because this is unexpected, but it's always those moments that are unexpected. I wasn't planning to sit at a coffee shop with no technology. Who plans that? But I sat there with no technology for 45 minutes. So if we practice stillness, we sort of automatically float towards this spiritual realm, simplicity and miraculous nature of the breath, which comes from the Creator. So when we commit to it, we're committing to not box checking, not getting things done, not hoping that there's going to be another reward or another hit, another drug, another donut. down the pike. Like this is it. This is the only thing we're doing right now. There is no, right now there is no 8 p.m. and there is no 9 p.m. right, and there is no 6 a.m. tomorrow, which sounds incredibly obvious, but it's very hard to not program in the next thing, but to know that we're just here to be still. So we'll just start by taking a few deep breaths and think about this floating away from the material, floating away from all the things of value, in quotes. Focusing on stillness, we're not wearing nice shoes or pants or shirts or driving the best car or living in the best house. next part is about the holy instrument. Of course, Rabbi Dessler is talking about instruments that you would use in the temple. So a menorah, or there used to even be like a bread offering in the temple, maybe the bread plate or incense that they would light, the altar itself. But whether it's within our daily lives or in the temple, he stresses that it cannot be used for a selfish purpose. So, in other words, we cannot misuse the gifts we've been given to pursue holiness only to please our selfish needs. For instance, one would not get drunk from a Kiddush cup, nor wash your dirty hands in a water cup for hand washing on Shabbat or any other day. So it's a reminder to use everyday objects with care as well, and not to let them be perverted into sources of material inclination. To use everyday objects in a holy capacity, to turn mundane into holiness, is part of what Jewish practice is about. To take a lamp and make it into a menorah, to take a menorah and make it into a Chanukiah, to practice the spreading of light in dark times as a spiritual and religious practice, and not just to say, well, it's dark, we better light a candle. To not use the lamp to light up, gifts of frivolity or of excess, but to use the lamp to light up the street so people can see that you're witnessing the miracles, so people can see that you're publicizing your religious life, that you're publicizing your religious values, your spiritual practice. To be what is called in the Torah an or lagoyim, a light unto the nations. Just yesterday, I had a bit of a family reunion with a bunch of my Orthodox family, that's many of whom live in Baltimore. Some of them came in for the occasion, and they were all standing on this playground where there are many, many Orthodox people, but also secular people, Jewish, not Jewish, and all of them with several children each, 7 kids, 6 kids, 9 kids. The compassion and the warmth and the care that they showed each other was really significant. That there was almost nobody with their phone out. There was almost nobody distracted by a phone. There was almost nobody that appeared to be stressed that they had to get to another activity. The Orthodox have their pros and their cons like everybody else. But for them, their autonomy is a gift because it allows them to live a spiritual life every single day without having to feel like they must bow to the needs and the demands of secular society. And I felt in that moment that they were instruments of light, that they were instruments of holiness. My wife even said to me, did you notice that how the parents spoke to the children, how the children spoke to the parents, and just the sweetness and the calmness that they showed, and the respect and the relationship between the siblings and the cousins? And I said, yeah, I did notice that. It was almost shocking to see it, because the rest of us are just so stressed out all the time. And so to use, one practice to use common objects, to think of common objects as if they were used in a temple or in a synagogue. I think about in a Buddhist monastery, or even in a meditation retreat, or at an ashram or something, if you're eating a meal, the care that you show in putting the food into your bowl or onto your plate, that you don't eat with excess, that you eat slowly and you eat with purpose, And in Judaism, what is the purpose of eating? The purpose of eating is to fulfill and nourish yourself so that you can practice your spirituality, so that you can be mindful, so that you can stand up and say the Amidah, so on and so forth. But in a Buddhist context, you would take your plate over and your bowl over, and you would eat your meal slowly, mindfully. And then, would you leave it on the counter? Would you leave it on the kitchen island? Would you just leave it in the sink? Never. You would take it back, wash it yourself, clean it, and make sure that it was perfectly clean, dry, and ready for the next use, and that the simplicity remains, that there's no dirt, there's no waste, that there's this sense of respect for the things that we use, there's a sense of respect for the things that we consume, and it permeates our tradition, it permeates the Buddhist Eastern practice, the tradition as well. And so when I think about the use of objects, that's what I think about, is holding a Kiddush cup, holding a hand washing cup, treating these things with respect is using them in a holy way. So they're material objects, but we're transforming them into vessels of holiness because we're using them for the intent. So the intent is what ends up mattering ultimately, more than where they're placed. So you think about all the ritual objects that you have in your home, and the care and the respect and the beauty with which we treat them on Shabbat. Why would we not treat all of our dishes that help nourish us with the same care? That all of the things that surround us, that keep us vibrant and keep us who we are, to care for those things, because through caring for those things, we're caring for ourselves. We're caring for our ability to continue a spiritual practice. So Rabbi Dessler talks about it in the terms of the temple, of course, but it extends out, and that's why I shared that song, which is really beautiful, by Navat Zahila, which is "Create a Pure Heart in Me." That's almost talking about yourself being a vessel, but really what's the difference between treating a vessel that you use for holiness and treating yourself as a vessel for holiness is really not that different. So we'll just sit for a few minutes. We're almost out of time, just to let that idea sink in, that we can use all the objects that we have in our possession every day. We must handle hundreds of objects every day without even thinking about it, and just use them mindfully, use them respectfully, and use them in a giving way and not in a selfish way, is another part of spiritual practice. hands to heart center and just thank ourselves this practice. We continue to learn about ourselves, about the path to truth, Light Yesharim, the path of the upright. And chant the Shema together. Shema Thank you all for being here. Thank you to those of you who joined us on the stream, and if you're still watching, we would love to have more and more people here physically present. The energy is really powerful inside the room. So when you're back on your vacations, we'll have a session next week on Monday night, and then a break until the middle 2 weeks of August, which I think are something like the 11th or the 12th and the 19th or something like that. The 12th and the 19th, I think, is right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.